So today I wanted to talk about Rolex and Tudor and sort of their relationship between the two brands. And really what I wanted to talk about is 5 things that Rolex can't do that Tudor can. Before I get into it, please don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon. It is super helpful for the channel and I very much appreciate it. So getting right into it. Rolex and Tudor are very popular watch brands. Both of them very, very popular. However, Rolex are arguably the most popular watches on earth. Rolex are one of the most recognizable brands ever, and currently the demand for Rolex far outweighs the supply. Rolex have a very specific formula that they have stuck to, and they don't deviate from this formula. It's sort of like a track for the brand. They do not deviate from this track no matter what. However, Tudor, who are also owned by the Hans Wilsdorf Foundation, the same foundation that owns Rolex, do venture off the beaten path very, very often. And in this video, I want to talk about 5 things that make Rolex and Tudor different. And by different, I mean they're essentially things that Rolex cannot do or will not do, but Tudor can. So number 1, getting right into it, these are in no particular order. However, I have to say, the first reason that I have on this list is definitely the most interesting, and it's something that almost all watch brands do, and I'm not only talking about Tudor, but every watch brand out there, and that is re-release watches from their back catalog. Vintage watches from their back catalog. They essentially take those designs, revamp them, make them more modern, and then re-release them as a modern watch, capitalizing on some of that nostalgia. This is something that obviously Rolex do not do, and Tudor absolutely thrive upon it. In fact, Tudor has almost built their entire business model on this one premise. The entire Black Bay lineup of watches is a great example. The Tudor Black Bay 58 is essentially an homage to a vintage Rolex Submariner. Now, we all know that Rolex and Tudor actually shared cases and other components specifically around the Submariner. And that does make sense because of the actual relationship between the two brands, where Tudor should be or was going to be a little bit more affordable, more accessible version of Rolex. Now that has all changed when they actually were re-released here in the United States. When Tudor actually re-entered the United States here, it was sort of a marking or a milestone for the brand, and they actually came up with a majority of their own design, technically their own designs. However, the Black Bay 58 is an homage to vintage Submariners and also Tudor Submariners, but technically all of those watches really can actually trace their lineage back to the Rolex Submariner, and that's just the way it is. So these are re-releases. A lot of brands do this. However, Rolex do not. Rolex have a DNA. They change very slowly over time, incrementally over time. I describe them as the Porsche 911 of watches. So essentially the Porsche 911 has never changed. The engine is in the back and it has never crept its way forward. And the Rolex Submariner and all Rolexes essentially look the same from when they first were released. They just incrementally change. So technically Rolex don't re-release watches. However, they don't change their watches. So these are essentially vintage watches that have been modernized over time, and they just have kept them in their catalog. They have never gone away, which is actually very interesting when you think about it, and that's what makes Rolex Rolex. Anyway, moving on to my second reason, and this is actually a really good reason. It's one of the reasons why I love Tudor. Tudor used different materials. Simply put, you're never going to get a ceramic cased Rolex, an all bronze Rolex, or a Rolex made out of carbon fiber. It's just not going to happen. It's not in the cards, and that's just the way it is. Rolex are very conservative. They're a very conservative brand. They save all of these cool materials for Tudor. Here and there, you're going to get some interesting dials from Rolex. However, you're not going to get a Submariner with an all bronze case, and forget about getting an all bronze bracelet. We got ceramic bezels from Rolex, but we're never going to see a Rolex with a ceramic case. Now, we just recently saw a Tudor Black Bay 58 in all bronze with an all bronze bracelet, which is actually really risky and kind of crazy for them to do. But like I said, that's something that Rolex could never do. And it's very interesting to see what Tudor's going to do next. And I really do like that. Whether you hate it or love it, a silver cased Rolex, not going to happen. A bronze cased Rolex, probably never going to happen. Something with a bronze bracelet, definitely never going to happen. Very cool that Tudor do. 3, and this is one that I obviously really do love because I've purchased one of these watches, wildcard watches. That's what I call them from Tudor. Watches like the Tudor Black Bay P01. That's a watch that I bought. It's a crazy looking watch with a crazy mechanism on the actual bezel that actually locks it. It's in between the lugs. It's a really crazy watch that was a one-off prototype that Rolex and Tudor actually made, but Rolex will never come out with this watch. Obviously, Tudor could, and they did. A lot of people actually went wild over this watch. They did not like it. They thought it was crazy. They thought it was a fake. They didn't even think that that original sort of prototype even existed. It did. They came out with it. Let's see what Tudor come out with next. We have no idea what they'll do next. And that's kind of the fun of Tudor. We don't know what they're going to do next. Sometimes they're coming out with a solid gold watch. It could be a solid silver watch, a solid bronze watch, a weird prototype that we've never seen. We don't know. And that keeps it kind of exciting. When we see a Rolex release, it's always disappointing. A lot of people get disappointed from it. It's just an incremental change. It's sort of the Porsche 911 formula, as I've mentioned, so you're not getting crazy changes. Nothing radical is going to happen. So getting into number 4. Today, in the watch community, Rolex might be actually best known for being overhyped. I actually did a few polls on my community page here on YouTube where I asked my audience if they preferred Rolex over other brands. Brands like Omega and JLC and a few others. And ironically, Rolex did not win out against most other brands that I put it up against. And I think that is because of frustration. I actually was really surprised because I do think Rolex makes some amazing watches, but there are a lot of frustrated people out there. That frustration with Rolex is based on the fact that they are unavailable to purchase. If you walk into a Rolex AD, their cases are bare. You cannot buy one if you wanted to. There's waiting lists. They don't have any watches to even show you. It doesn't matter if it's your first watch or your 10th watch. They don't have them. You have to have a relationship with the AD to even get on the list and then eventually get called, if that even happens. A lot of this is due to flippers, Instagrammers, showboaters on Instagram. They are kind of the worst, I have to tell you. They're kind of ruining collecting for a lot of people. They're creating hype, and they are actually the ones to really blame for the inflated prices on all of these watches. However, Rolex do hold a little bit of that blame. Rolex will not increase production on many of their models, and there are many reasons for that. Some of them good, some of them bad. I actually did a whole video on that. I'll put a link above so you guys could check that out. Therefore, Rolex cannot meet demand. Tudor can. If you go to an AD, Tudor have watches in the showcase. You could walk in there and you could actually buy one if you want to. Some say Rolex are pushing would-be buyers to Tudor, and that may be true. However, buyers should always remember one thing. They have choices. There are other iconic watches out there from other iconic brands who are very happy and very willing to take your money and at a discount. So definitely keep that in mind if you are in the market for a Rolex. There are other cool watches out there and they are willing to take your money. So last but not least, and I think one of the most important reasons on this list, Rolex can't do what Tudor can. Essentially, Tudor are more affordable than Rolex. However, they offer a better value for money when you're just looking at the specs. And that is a big deal for a lot of people. So they are more focused on the specs, offering you a lot more for your money than Rolex do. You're actually paying a premium for the Rolex based on the cachet of the name Rolex these days. And that is something that Rolex has really leaned into heavily in the past few years. And Tudor have really come up and made some amazing watches at affordable prices that are really spec'd almost as good as the Rolexes. However, make no mistake, that cachet is really what you're paying for when you pay for a Rolex. And it makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of history behind that name, and it's what you're paying for. It comes down to that. Do I really love Rolex? Absolutely. Do I want to own a Rolex? Absolutely. Will I own a Rolex? Probably not. And that's because of my own way of collecting. I probably will never own a Rolex because of the fact that they are overpriced right now, and I refuse to actually pay over retail. Do I own Tudor? Yes. Will I own more Tudors in the future? Yes. And that's because they do offer very good value for money. You can get them at the discount that I'm looking for. I don't want to pay full price. I could walk into an AD and take a look at them. So those are a lot of reasons why I do like Tudor. Do I like Tudor more than I like Rolex? Not necessarily. In fact, I do love Rolex a lot. I love the history. I love what they've done with all of their watches. I think they do a great job. I just don't want to pay overpriced. I don't feed into the hype, and that's just who I am. Anyway, tell me what you guys think in the comments below about what I said today. These 5 reasons why Rolex can't do what Tudor can do. I think it's kind of an interesting subject. I really want to hear from you guys. Are there some other ideas that I've missed here? Please tell me in the comments below. I want to hear from you guys. Please also don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon. It is super helpful for the channel and I very much appreciate it. Please follow me on Instagram. My Instagram is WatchChrisBlog. I have some links in the description. Those links are to Amazon. If you click those links and buy anything, it helps support the channel. It doesn't cost you anything extra. However, I very much appreciate it. Anyway, thank you for logging on. I'll catch you guys in the next video.